That is James Mennie. He is over at the Montreal Gazette. Jim, can I go back to what I just heard on the news now? You heard, and I think we may have talked about this before, Francois Legault say, no, he has no plans not to run in the next provincial election. He's all geared up for it. Are you buying that?
No, I'm happy to say I'm among the first people on this show to say, and it was maybe even 6 months ago. When the fortunes of the CAQ began to go south, it was clear because the CAQ, there is no CAQ. It's la partie de François Legault.
Right.
And the bottom line is, when you see lousy numbers, yes, they're for the CAQ, but they are in fact for François Legault. And no, I don't see him trying to go for a third term when it's clear the people of Quebec have turned. No matter what sex, I know he keeps appealing to the regions. I know he keeps appealing to the frightened Anglophobes and xenophobes and anti-immigrant factors and thinks that's going to get him through, or giving his presence with our own money. Although that seems to have been, I don't know if you saw that interview in the Journal Now today with people over, I think it was Standard & Poor's, who cut the credit rating for Quebec, who said one of the factors was the fact he kept giving these tax handouts to citizens. That doesn't work either. He has proven to be one of the most disastrous prime ministers in the history of Quebec. And I would be astounded, even if he wanted to, I'd be astounded that anybody would want him to lead their party, because the only place you're going to be going is off a cliff.
Okay, let me move from that to the scandal, if I can call it, mini scandal. Maybe it's not. Soraya Martinez-Ferreira going to be running for mayor, of course, against Projet Montréal. And today comes the story. She was a landlord, and she included, these, I guess, clauses in her rent, which are illegal. Is this a tempest in a teapot or more than that, Jim?
Well, I mean, I've heard her explanation. It sounds a bit like the dog ate my homework. But when I saw this story this morning, what occurred to me was, especially when the idea that apparently this transaction was done through a third party, what in God's name does this have to do with her being mayor? Help me out here, because I missed that connecting thread.
Well, I guess what they're suggesting is, and I think someone called it out already, it might have been Luc Rabouin, saying, it just shows a lack of judgment.
Because, I mean, it would be the same thing, I guess, if she was mayor. If I want to put this in the real world, and if she was mayor and said, I won't raise your taxes, and then raised your taxes, that's not that big a deal, Aaron, because apparently Valerie Plante did exactly that, okay, and she got reelected. So, I mean, and I'm no fan of Madame Ferreira. I don't know her from a hole in the ground. I still don't know where the hell Ensemble Montréal is going to be by the time next November is over. But I'm looking at this story and I'm going, slow day at the old investigative bureau there, boy. It's I'm just saying. And as for this idea that they said she had a master's from HEC, but she never really got it. Well, and she's saying, well, I didn't write it. So I mean, but the other question is, why am I seeing this now? Is this some helpful soul over at Projet Montréal realizing the numbers are starting to turn against them, no matter who they run against, who's trying to have some fun here? I don't know, But all I tell you is this is dropping out of a ceiling tile, and honestly, I think if you want to undercut Madame's chances for the mayoralty, you'll have to do better than that.
It's interesting because there's already an article, I think it was in the Journal, right, just after this came forward, suggesting, and I think Luca Ferrandez is quoted in here, so take it where it's from, suggesting that based on this alone, David Hertel is now going to be approached by Ensemble Montréal.
Well, I think, I'm a huge fan of David, and you have asked him the question, 700 times, I don't know, are you going to take the mayoralty? And he points out, not at this time. I guess anything is possible. But like I say, it just strikes me. I usually like to know why things are happening for any given reason, as opposed to when I see a story that gets published. I mean, what triggered this? Where is this coming from? And as I say, I didn't go, this is it for her. I don't think. First of all, this will be forgotten by the end of the week. And tempest in a teapot. It's not even our teapot, to tell you the truth. So I wouldn't get too hyper over it. But you know what I mean? It's just the whole thing just struck me as being a bit louche. But we'll see what happens. Maybe they have more in store. Maybe they have more in their big bag of tricks. And if they do, by all means, bring it on. But please, I would expect it to have a little more, how can I put it, punch to it than what I read this morning.
All right, let me go on and move from that to what I talked to Colton Prale about, the cabinet picks coming out tomorrow, Jim. Going to hear there's been a shuffle. There's going to be a lot of new faces. I think that's the thing we keep hearing, a lot of new faces in this cabinet. What are you expecting?
Well, what I expect, listen, he has an obligation. Carney has an obligation. First of all, this had better not, and I agree with Colton Prale that you look at the expectation. This can't be Trudeau 2.0. This can't be Trudeau 1.5. This has got to be the anti-Trudeau cabinet. As for the idea that we're going to have ministers or secretaries of state or ministers for something, it's kind of more of an English thing that they do. But all that said, the idea that the cabinet is going to be smaller and more focused. We elected this guy. We hired this guy with a very specific mandate: deal with Donald Trump and get our economy out of the weeds. That is going to be job one, and I think that is going to transcend. I know we're shooting for gender parity. Okay, that's very admirable. But the bottom line is, no matter what the gender is of the taxpayer, they want this promise to be fulfilled. They want this government to do what we hired it to do, which is essentially protect this economy, deal with Donald Trump. Everything else is just window dressing. So, and it's going to be very interesting, not only in terms of the choices that are made tomorrow, but also how Carney frames these choices in his comments. Because the idea, I think the last thing he wants to do right now is, after this election, is kind of like turn around and say, okay, well, the crisis is over. No, it's not over. And even though today Donald Trump suffered a huge reversal, a huge climb down with China, and the markets are reflecting that right now. They're not quite singing "Ding Dong, the witch is dead," but it's clear how much smoke and mirrors Trump has been inflicting on the world for the past 3 months. That said, I don't think he can stray from that path. We can't go back to the way things are. And once again, the big elephant in the room, or the second largest, the biggest one is Trump. The second largest is this famous energy corridor, Aaron. This is going to be a sales job, and I laughed when we talked about this the first time. He announced his energy policy with an energy corridor without once ever mentioning the word pipeline. But we'll see how long he can keep that plate spinning going on. But the reality is, sooner or later, it's going to have to happen. So whether it's east or west, we're really going to see, and maybe this, because a lot of this, I think, is a media creation. I think a lot, especially in Quebec, I think of the law, the perceived opposition in Quebec to pipelines is more friendly columnists and separatist politicians who get their noses out of joint in terms of the environment. And you and I have had the conversation. I think I've discussed 3 polls that have been conducted in Quebec that show most Quebecers don't have a problem with 60-some-odd% don't have a problem with pipelines. They would rather be pumping Canadian oil into their car than U.S. oil into their car, or foreign oil into their car. And this idea that somehow that Quebec doesn't want to embrace the West's dirty, or Canada's dirty energy, is essentially a fabrication courtesy of Francois Legault. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how far out on that limb Carney goes tomorrow. But one thing's for sure, you can't even suggest that anything resembling the status quo from the days of Justin Trudeau is going to be maintained.
I want to ask you what I asked Colton as well. I just done one of those things that's kind of been going through my head, and that's with Chrystia Freeland. I know how far off base that is, right? But remember, she set everything here basically in motion when she left.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And we know Donald Trump doesn't like her. He's made that apparent. He said it last time when they were at the meeting. Does Mark Carney look to Chrystia Freeland, who has lots of experience, and yes, she was part of Justin Trudeau's government, but remember, she quit, and give her something? What do you think?
I think that Chrystia Freeland will be more than happy to advise Carney, and Carney will be more than happy to take that advice. Will he be doing so within the context of him giving her some kind of an official title? Maybe special advisor? I don't know. I don't think she's going to be out of the loop, but I hear what you're saying because, a crazy man down south just doesn't like her. But you know what? I think to a certain extent, I think a lot of people would nod approvingly if Carney said, you know what, go plunk straight to hell, Trump. I get to choose who's in my cabinet. And she has the expertise. She already kicked your butt once. Maybe she'll do it again, even though she won't be on the front line. She might be, calling the play. She might be quarterbacking the whole thing. So you know what? I don't think you're going to see Chrystia Freeland shunted to one side, at least not, how can I put it? Not super publicly. I just don't see that happening.
Last question,
and if
real
it does
quick.
happen, it'll be a mistake.
Okay. We're going to find out tomorrow because that's when he announces his cabinet. Yep. Jim, last thing, I started the question today on the story about, F1, keeping an eye on Montreal, see how the Grand Prix goes this year, and I'm asking Alaska again. You care one way or the other? We lose this. Is this a big loss for Montreal given what it costs?
How many years, how many decades have we been talking about, and I have been covering each new shakedown from F1? Doesn't matter who's in charge. Montreal seems to be the easiest mark for F1. We need this. We need more money. Give us what we want, and we move the race. Move the damn race. I remember we had that infamous summer, Aaron, where we didn't have an F1, and guess what? Montreal did not implode. There are a lot of things going wrong in Montreal economically and in terms of development and management, but the fact that F1 is or isn't here isn't one of them.
James Mennie at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
As a Matt.